For thousands of years, this has been hidden beneath an unwritten silence, buried under layers of dogma and translation, waiting for a generation ready to listen not with their ears, but with their spirit. What if Jesus spoke a prayer so powerful it shook matter itself, and what if its words were never meant to survive on parchment, only in breath? The hidden secret is yet to be uncovered, so stick with me. Because what we are peeling back today is not just history, it is the mechanics of the miraculous. At the end, I am uncovering a truth that will shift how you perceive the very reality you walk through. The night wind moved gently through the olive trees, carrying with it the scent of crushed leaves and damp earth. Jerusalem slept, a sprawling labyrinth of stone and shadow, unaware that just beyond its walls, history was holding its breath. The moon hung low, pale and watchful, casting long silver fingers through the gnarled branches of Gethsemane, as though it too feared what might be spoken aloud. Somewhere in that heavy darkness, a voice whispered not loudly, not for crowds, not for the scribes who stood ready with their ink, but with an authority that bent the unseen. And when the whisper ended, something impossible happened. Not once, not twice, but every time. They would later call it a miracle. The theologians would call it divinity. But those who were close to him, those who watched the rise and fall of his chest before the seas calmed or the blind eyes opened, knew better. It was not magic. It was a prayer. But it was a prayer unlike any the world has heard since the dawn of time. To understand this, we must go back. Long before ink met parchment, before councils voted on what was holy and what was heretic, and before scrolls were sealed in wax, the world was shaped by sound. In the ancient Near East, in the dusty libraries of Babylon and the temples of the Nile, the wise knew that the universe was not solid. It was vibrating. In the book of Genesis, creation itself did not begin with a weapon, a tool, or a gesture. It began with a frequency. And God said, and light obeyed. The ancient Hebrews understood this better than we do. To them, speech was not mere communication. It was not just data transfer between two minds. It was vibration. It was alignment. It was force. The Hebrew word davar means both word and thing. In the ancient mind, to speak a word was to create a thing. The breath carried intention. The name carried essence. And prayer, when spoken from the deepest center of being, from the place the mystics call the seat of the soul, did not ask for reality to change. It rearranged the building blocks of reality itself. Jesus of Nazareth was raised inside this understanding, but he took it to a depth that terrified the scholars of his day. As a boy, he listened in the synagogues, where rabbis debated the Torah with fierce reverence. He watched them recite the Amidah, rocking back and forth, trying to touch the hem of the divine through repetition. He learned the Psalms not as poetry, but as living keys to a locked door. By the word of the Lord the heavens were made, David sang, and the boy remembered. He learned that Moses did not simply stretch his hand over the Red Sea in a theatrical gesture, he spoke to it. He learned that Elijah did not merely hope for fire on Mount Carmel, he called it down with words shaped by a terrifying obedience. And yet, when Jesus began to walk the dusty, sun-baked roads of Galilee, what flowed from his mouth was unlike anything they had heard. It wasn't just the message, it was the frequency. It began quietly, almost unnoticed, like a ripple in a dark pond. In Capernaum, a fisherman named Eliab had a daughter who had not spoken in 3 years. The physicians, with their poultices and bitter herbs, said her tongue was whole, her ears unblocked, but her spirit was locked behind some invisible gate, trapped in a fortress of trauma that no medicine could breach. When Jesus entered their home, the air in the room shifted. It became heavy, charged, like the atmosphere before a lightning strike. He did not raise his voice. He did not summon witnesses to prove his power. He knelt, placed a calloused hand near the girl's mouth, and whispered something no one could fully hear. It was not a blessing. It was not a command in the way a general commands a soldier. And it was certainly not the prayers they knew from the temple service. When the whisper ended, there was a silence so deep it felt like the pause between heartbeats, a vacuum where time seemed to suspend. Then, the girl spoke. Not a cry, not confusion, but a single lucid word, Father. Those present later argued about what had happened. Some said Jesus had healed her by faith. Others said by authority. But Eliab, who had leaned close enough to hear the cadence if not the syllables, said something else entirely. He said the air itself had changed, as though the room had leaned inward to listen, as though something ancient, something that existed before the foundations of the earth, had been named. Word spread, as it always does, traveling faster than the caravans on the trade routes. And with it came fear. Because miracles were not the problem. Israel knew miracles, their history was paved with them. The prophets had spoken them into being. But Jesus did something unsettling. He did not call upon God as though God were distant, sitting on a throne above the circle of the earth. He spoke as though God were already listening from within. He spoke as though the separation between heaven and earth was an illusion he could dissolve at will. The disciples noticed it first. They were simple men, fishermen, tax collectors, zealots, but they were attuned to the moods of their master. Peter once asked him, "Rabbi, teach us to pray." And Jesus answered with words now known across the world, recited in cathedrals and whispered in trenches. "Our Father who art in heaven." It was a prayer of alignment, a prayer of surrender, a prayer safe enough to be shared with the masses. But there were other moments the Gospels hint at but do not fully transcribe. Moments when Jesus withdrew alone to the desolate places, to the mountain peaks where the air was thin and cold. Moments when he told them to stay back. Moments when he prayed not upward, but inward. And when he returned from those moments of sonic alignment, the impossible followed him like a shadow. Storms calmed not because he shouted, but because his internal peace was louder than the external chaos. Bread multiplied not because he was a magician, but because he understood the law of abundance that underpins nature. The dead stirred not because he disturbed their sleep, but because he reconnected them to the source of life. John, the youngest and most mystical of the disciples, once wrote, "In him was life, and the life was the light of men." But John also remembered the sound. He remembered that before the light came, there was a breath, a vibration. Consider the incident in the hills near Bethsaida. A Roman centurion, a man of iron and blood, knelt before Jesus, pleading for his servant. "Only speak a word," the soldier said, "and my servant will be healed." This was an astonishing confession. A man trained in the hierarchy of Rome, who bowed only to Caesar, recognized a superior authority in a Galilean carpenter. He understood the mechanics of command. Jesus marveled. He turned to the crowd and said he had not found such faith even in Israel. But what happened next was stranger than the telling. Jesus turned away. He closed his eyes, shutting out the sensory input of the world. And for a moment, his lips did not move at all. He entered a state of profound stillness. Then, barely audible, he spoke a phrase so old it did not belong to any language still living in the markets of Judea. The servant was healed at that very hour, miles away. Matthew recorded the miracle. Luke recorded the faith. But neither recorded the words. They could not. Why? Because those words were not meant to be written. Ancient Jewish mystics believed they were prayers too potent for ink. The breath was sacred because it vanished as soon as it was released. It was dynamic, living. To trap certain words on a page was to risk their misuse, to turn a living key into a dead idol. Solomon himself, legend said, sealed knowledge away because humanity was not ready for the responsibility of such power. Jesus knew this tradition, and he honored it. He knew that the power did not lie in the syllables themselves, like a magic spell from a pagan grimoire. The power lay in the consciousness of the one speaking them. In the Gospel of John, Jesus says, "The words that I speak to you are spirit, and they are life." Spirit, breath, pneuma in Greek, ruach in Hebrew, the same word used for wind, for life force, for the unseen movement of God. When Jesus spoke, he was not just transmitting information, he was transmitting life force. He was breathing ruach into a dead situation. This brings us to the tomb of Lazarus. This is where the veil is thinnest. Lazarus had been dead 4 days. In the Jewish tradition, the soul hovers near the body for 3 days, but by the 4th, it has departed, and decomposition corruption has set in. The situation was hopeless. When Jesus arrived, he did not rush. He waited. He felt the weight of the grief around him. When he stood before the tomb, he wept. Not from doubt, but perhaps from the sheer density of the human sorrow he had to pierce through. Martha said to him, "Even now, I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you." She was still thinking in the old paradigm: ask and receive. Separation. Jesus did not answer her directly. Instead, he stepped toward the stone, the barrier between the living and the dead. He demanded the stone be moved. The smell of death wafted out, a primal warning to stay back. But Jesus stood his ground. And then he prayed. But listen closely. Listen to the tense of the verbs in the text. "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me." Past tense. Have heard. He hadn't asked for anything yet. Or had he? The prayer had already happened in the silence before he opened his mouth. The alignment had already occurred. The circuit was already closed. The resurrection was a done deal before the command was given. Then, and only then, did he cry out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come forth." The command was the trigger. The prayer was the gunpowder. Something had been enacted in the silence before the word. Those who stood closest felt eta pressure in the chest, a ringing in the ears, a sense that the laws of entropy were being violently reversed. When Lazarus emerged, wrapped in grave clothes, shuffling into the sunlight, the crowd gasped in terror and awe. But Jesus did not look triumphant. He looked burdened, because every time he spoke from that place of absolute unity, the veil between the worlds grew thinner, and thinner veils invite consequences. The religious authorities began to take notice, not just because he healed, but because of how he healed. The Pharisees knew the scriptures better than anyone. They knew Isaiah's promise. They knew the Torah. But Jesus did not cite authority like a lawyer citing a precedent. He embodied it. He did not say, "Thus says the Lord." He spoke as though the Lord were breathing through his own vocal cords. This was dangerous. This was blasphemy. But worse than blasphemy, it was a threat to the structure of the world they controlled. In whispered meetings, under the cover of night, they ask a question they dared not ask aloud. What if he knows the name? Not the titles. Not Adonai, or Elohim, or El Shaddai. The name beneath names. The Tetragrammaton. The sound that holds the atoms together. The vibration Moses heard in the burning bush but could not fully pronounce. If he possessed the lost key of David, the vibrational understanding of how to knit matter together, he was unstoppable. He didn't need an army. He didn't need money. He had the source code of reality. And so, we come to Gethsemane, the garden of the oil press, the place where the olive is crushed to produce light. The symbolism is perfect. The secret reached its climax here. The garden was dark, the shadows stretching like phantoms. The disciples slept, exhausted by sorrow and confused by the impending doom. And Jesus knelt alone, pressed against the cold earth like a man trying to remember where he came from, trying to ground the infinite electricity coursing through a finite body. "Father," he said, "if it is possible, let this cup pass from me." This was not the forbidden prayer. This was the human prayer. This was the flesh recoiling from the torture to come. But the other prayer came later. Luke, the physician, writes that his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. This is a rare medical condition known as hematidrosis, caused by extreme, unparalleled mental and spiritual pressure. The capillaries burst under the strain. Why? Because he was holding two opposing forces within him, the will of man to survive and the will of God to redeem. And then, somewhere between surrender and resolve, Jesus spoke again. No gospel records exactly what was whispered in that final moment of the garden. But after that moment, everything changed. The struggle ended. The fear evaporated. He rose. He woke the disciples not with panic, but with a calm that was more terrifying than his grief. He walked toward the betrayal, toward the arrest, toward the cross, as though time itself had already agreed to the outcome. He had aligned the timeline. He had spoken the silence. On Golgotha, the place of the skull, the drama played out for the world to see. As nails pierced flesh, Jesus cried out words we know. "Father, forgive them. It is finished." But there was one moment, just before the darkness fell at noon, when the witnesses said his lips moved without sound. The sky turned black, though it was midday. The birds stopped singing. The wind died. And then he released his spirit. And when he did, the earth shook. Rocks split. And most significantly, the heavy, woven veil in the temple, the barrier that separated the Holy of Holies, the dwelling place of God, from the rest of the world tore from top to bottom. Not from bottom to top, as if by human hands, from top to bottom, from heaven to earth. It was a sonic event, a frequency so high, so pure, that the physical barrier could not maintain its integrity. The secret prayer was not just words, it was the final removal of the separation between God and man. The silence had been broken. After the resurrection, Jesus appeared to his disciples in a locked room. He did not knock. He simply was there. Reality was no longer a barrier to him. He breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit." Notice this. He did not teach them the forbidden prayer. He did not give them a scroll with incantations. He did not give them a seminar on metaphysics. He breathed on them. He made them the prayer. Because the secret was never the words. It was never a formula you could memorize and use to control the world. It was alignment. It was union. It was the remembrance that the kingdom of God is not coming someday in the distant future, it is within you. It is a frequency you carry. In later centuries, fragments of this understanding surfaced. We see it in the Gnostic texts found in earthen jars in Nag Hammadi. We hear it in the whispers of the desert fathers who fled the cities to find God in the silence. They spoke of hesychasm, the practice of holy silence, of descending the mind into the heart. They hinted at a prayer not of request, but of awakening, a way of speaking that did not beg reality to change, but reminded reality of what it already was in the mind of God. These things were not erased, one ancient teacher wrote. They were hidden in plain sight, because only those who walk the path will hear them. To the rest, they are foolishness. And now, as you listen to this, something stirs. You feel it, don't you? A resonance. A memory of something you never knew you had forgotten. Not because you have learned a forbidden formula today. If I gave you the Aramaic words right now, they would be useless to you without the internal alignment. It would be like giving a loaded weapon to a child, or a master key to a thief. The safety mechanism of the kingdom is that the power only works when the heart is dead to the ego. But something stirs because you have remembered the silence after the word. You have remembered that your breath is not just oxygen exchange, it is a connection to the Ruach, the spirit. The hidden flame was never taken from humanity, it was only forgotten, buried under the noise of commerce and war and religion that lost its way. Jesus did not come to perform miracles to show off. He came to be the prototype. He came to show what happens when heaven and earth agree inside a human soul. He came to show that when the frequency of the created matches the frequency of the Creator, the mountains move. And perhaps that is why the prayer was never written. Because once spoken from the wrong place, it would do nothing at all. It would be empty noise. But spoken from the right place, from the place of absolute surrender, absolute love, and absolute union, it would change everything. It would rewrite your history. It would heal your bloodline. It would tear the veil in your own mind that tells you that you are separate from the divine. The question is not whether the prayer exists. The question is, are you quiet enough to hear it? Are you ready to stop asking and start aligning? If this story stirred something ancient within you, if you felt the vibration of truth in these words, do not let it fade. Stay with us. The rabbit hole goes much deeper than this. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to walk deeper with Cosmognosis. We are dedicated to excavating the forgotten truths, the esoteric wisdom, and the lost keys of the past. The next revelation is already waiting in the silence, and I am uncovering what will make you control the world you are today, not by force, but by the power of the Spirit within. Welcome to the remembrance.